Hello, and thanks for joining us today on the Higher Ground podcast. My name is Tom Castriota, and I got the idea for this podcast during a coaching session that I had with one of my mentees. It's a simple idea, really. I interview my friends to cover all sorts of topics about life at work and provide advice to help you reach your career potential. So whether you're preparing for an interview, seeking a promotion, or just curious about what's in the minds of hiring managers, executives, or other interview candidates, then this podcast is for you. Join us as we explore real career journeys, one story at a time. Oh, and from our lawyers, views expressed on the Higher Ground podcast are the personal opinions of myself and our guests and don't necessarily represent the views of their employers, past or present. And if you like the show, please like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Higher Ground podcast. Today I have with me Tom Redman. Tom and I worked a number of years ago at a little hedge fund, and it's been a wonderful reconnecting. And rather than me try to go through Tom's background, I know he's the data doc, and I've always known him that way, but we share a mutual passion for data quality and a number of other things. So before I botch your background, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Thank you, Tom. By the way, it's great to be working together on something. Let's have some fun here. Sort of me, statistics, Bell Labs, hung out my shingle. Been so lucky to work with some of the, great companies all over the world on some of their really fascinating quality problems. Fortunate enough to run into some editors in Harvard Business Review and Sloan Management Review and other places who've, helped teach me to write and communicate and give me a platform for, trying to help the world advance. And here we are today. And it's so exciting. I suppose the most unexpected thing I learned along the way was people. Everything happens through people. And I couldn't be more excited about people empowering themselves through data and the good things that can happen for them and quite frankly for all of us.
Yeah, I can't agree more. There's, I through my, my few years out there working, it's a common theme where we talk about, we think it's a technical problem or it's a management problem. It's the getting people aligned and getting people to understand each other and getting people to solve problems and working together. It's been the joy of my career. I've really enjoyed that. The people.
Absolutely correct. I mean, people are wonderful. And I know it's common now to say people are part of the problem. And I don't know, maybe one or two is. I haven't run into that person, but I know 100% certain that the solutions and the way forward run through people.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, that's and I believe congratulations are in order. Your book has been translated into its most recent into Turkish, right? How many languages are you in now?
Well, People in Data is just in English and Turkish.
Okay.
And, but I understand it's lined up for Chinese. By the way, just, this People in Data is my most important stuff. About 2 years old and really good reviews on it. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten sinfully rich off it yet.
Well, the sin comes later, doesn't it? First comes the cash, then comes the sin.
Well, let's hope. Anyway,
there you go. So, tell us a little bit about the book. I regretfully have not had a chance to read it yet, but I do remember the first one that I read.
So, I mean, look, the basic idea was it took me a while to see these threads, Tom, but what I found when looking back was that every time there was a really I had a successful engagement. Sometimes I was an employee. Oftentimes I was an advisor, right? In different, in different capacities. But every time there was a success, there was some group of individuals who took things on and had the courage to look at a hard problem in a different way and empower themselves to solve it in a different way. The first time, and I didn't spot it when it happened, but I was working at AT&T in the time, and we'd had a big success, and there was a party on Baltimore Harbor, and they invited me to join, and I didn't know all that many people, but I asked around, and so I asked one woman, well, how did this project go for you? And she did these thing where she voice got low and she closed the distance between us, and she said, Tom, I've worked for this company for 20 stinking years, and this is the first time what I did really, really mattered. It's the first time I had any control of anything. And let me tell you what I did. And then she proceeded to do that. Right. And unfortunately, I did not see that pattern in one. But after two or three times like that, I began to see this. You want success with data, right? And so mostly I worked on data quality. It goes through people. Okay. And people empower themselves. Then when I stepped back and I looked at it, I said, okay, well, let's look at data science. Can we do data science without people? No. Can we do architecture? No. Can we do better decision making? No. Every single thing that we hold dear and holy in the data space depends on people, and they want in, right? And so people and data was my attempt, right, to explore exactly what this means. And step one is first of all, put them front and center in the organization chart.
Absolutely.
Organize your data program to make them very, very successful. And tell them exactly what you want them to do. And then, give them some training, give them support, and watch some great things happen.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. Are there any particular like organizational structure, any design, or do you? I know, like when we used to work at that hedge fund,
Yes.
there are a lot of principles around org design, like you have to have the right person in the box, responsible party, all of that stuff. But do you have a particular point of view about, because every organization is different? Like what works at Bridgewater may not work at Goldman Sachs. It may not work at company XYZ. Were there any? Did you notice any particular common patterns or common structures that you could implement people wise?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. I mean, and I want to start. Let's put people front and center, okay? And everybody in every organization, I think this is true everywhere, serves in two roles that are obvious once you call them out. The first thing is they're data customers. They're depending on data that they get from somebody else to do their job. And the second thing is they're data creators, right? They are creating data that is going to go forward somewhere in the organization and somebody is going to use. And I mean, you can think of this as sort of like a daisy chain. People in marketing
Sure.
create leads that people in sales follow up, who
Follow
create
through, and then
orders that people in operations follow up, and
sure,
finance, and on and on. And by the way, there's, data science, and there's data science on the far end. And so I'm going to just start with data quality, but it's a big part of the puzzle is these two concepts, this data creator and data customer, and that everyone is one. It is central to organizing, for data. Now step back and say, well, how are we going to do that? And different organizations may come up with different solutions to that, right? At a high level, you need a central team, and
yeah,
they're organizing the training and making sure
sure,
people get connected and blah 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 blah. And then you need something in the middle, right? And you need something in the middle because you kind of have a small team here, and then hundreds or thousands of people that are co-opted as creators and customers, and we call those connectors. And so I use the term embedded data manager, right? It's sort of like, I
okay,
don't know if you ever worked in an organization that had an ombudsman person for HR,
yes,
right?
yes.
All right,
They
and
bring people together. They resolve problems. They're the glue that holds together this party and that party.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we've set them up in various ways. By and large, they report in to their home organization, not the headquarters, right? They go by various names. I started calling them embedded data managers. Interestingly, I had assignment soon after that hedge fund, and that assignment they like the term responsible party for those people, right? I have another client who calls them ambassadors, right?
Ooh,
You're
that's nice. You get a
yeah,
little badge and like maybe a I don't know, scepter or
that's right. I mean, look, it reflects something. I mean, the
Right.
the the new organization. The first thing is this business of creators and customers, and then the
Mm,
second business is we're better connected. All
sure.
right. And you think about it, the creators over in one department, customer and over in another, they can't
Hmm.
work in isolation.
No,
They need to be connected. And that's part of what, the embedded data managers,
yeah,
need to do. Right. Now, some people it's a full, some companies it's a full-time role, others
sure.
it's a part-time role, right? Sometimes people want to put new people into the role because it
Mm,
rolls through and it gets them meeting people and right.
yeah.
And so um so I, I I- i'm not I'm we're, as you say, we're adapting those concepts to what already works inside a larger an ongoing organization.
Sure, sure. And the so I know everyone's responsibility is quality, right? But sometimes when it's everyone, it's no one, right? So
Right.
do you see, like, how do you put quality gates or controls or different ways to make sure you've got, like, if you think of it as a daisy chain, right? We've got producer or creator and then customer coming down the line. Everyone does their thing as it flows down, like you said, the daisy chain. How do you inject better quality processes in those flows?
So one of the things that, like if you bust open any organization, I mentioned the sales organization. I've never been very good at sales, so I like going in and learning about those guys. And some, like kind of, okay, well, what do you do when you come in? And so, what's your job? So, well, come on, Redman, right? We call on people. We try to turn prospects into leads and into sales. And so, but how's that going? And after 10 or 15 minutes, it's like, well, where do you get the prospects? And the answer is we get them from marketing. Okay. Well, do they send you good stuff? And then the faces turn, right?
I, I have been in enough sales organizations to know the term that salespeople say, "I'm from marketing and I'm here to help," is not exactly what you
Yeah.
really.
Right. Well, so then this sort of thing unfolds is how do they know what you need? Okay. And most salespeople go, we admit very quickly, we never told them. Okay.
Okay, well that's it. Honest organizations are good.
Right? But that's step one. Step
Sure.
one is you cannot expect high quality data unless you communicate to people that are creating your stuff
Yeah,
what you want. All right. And so, in terms of this, everybody's responsibility for quality. I mean, it's a shared accountability. As
hundred
a
percent.
customer, you're responsible for figuring out what the hell you need and communicating it to the creator. And if you don't do that, then don't complain, right?
That's
Now,
fair.
most everybody says, "Okay, we'll give that a shot," kind of thing. The next thing I ask them is, well, now, like, you work hard at understanding what the operations guys need from you, right? You're the creator for them, and again, most of them are pretty honest. Never gave that a second's thought, Tom. We
Yeah.
throw that over,
Yeah,
right?
I take care of I get the contract signed. You guys figure out the rest. Never mind about when it's due, what terms and conditions, all of the bits that go around executing the contract. We don't care about that. We got it signed.
Right. Never mind if we can actually deliver, right? Right. And so this business of being a creator is the mirror image. Once somebody's told you what they need,
I love
right?
that.
Work together to put a measurement in place. right?
Mm,
See, right? Work together. Usually you put that measurement in place and, oh my goodness, this isn't very good. All right, what are we going to do first? And
sure.
patiently, one at a time, figure out and eliminate the root causes of, of error, why some needs not being met. All right. And by the way, that work is what is so much when I talked about people empowering themselves. That is way better than coming in and go, oh, look at this crap from sales, right?
Yeah.
Right. Look, those prima donnas, they think they
Well,
make
that's the
all
people.
right.
That's your people connection, right? Because
That
if
is
you're
the
my partner, not my adversary, we're going to be much more successful together.
we're going to be much more successful together. Our workload, all of our workloads is going to go down. And
Sure.
right? And so,
That's
and by the
interesting.
way, once you see this, right?
Mm.
I've the best part of my career has been seeing it lots and lots of times. But once you see it, you can't unsee it, right?
Well, I have to say, Tom, I'm not. This is a compliment because making things easy to understand is incredibly hard, right? And like simplicity is a blessing in a lot of ways, but it's not easy to do. And this model is incredibly simple. And it's like I look this way, I'm a data creator, and in this way, I'm a customer. And it's if you just I have two hats, and if I think about it in that pipeline in that flow perspective, you know, my hat might change depending which direction I'm facing, but you're in this together, and then I think it's a phenomenally simple model that's incredibly powerful.
It's right. I
Awesome,
mean,
yeah,
you think about companies. I mean, we're supposed to be in it together.
yes. And what is the old saying about politics and being there are no I forget the exact quote, but it has something to do with politics don't enter an organization until there's more than one person in a room. Something like that. I might have butchered that one, but
Yeah.
not everyone operates from the best of intentions, but we want to believe that. Like at least I do. I always go into a conversation that this person is coming with best intentions, and sometimes it just takes a little time to unpack. What are the things stopping them from being successful with that perspective?
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean, marketing managers and sales managers may not get along, and they may be competing for the top job. But in the middle and below, there is no problem with with
That's
with
true.
any of this. And frankly, I mean, nobody at the senior level wants to be perceived as screwing the next guy in line up,
Of
right?
course. Yeah,
So
no,
their
that's true.
motives
Yeah.
may not be as pure, but the politics kind of sort of acts in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think your model really works again to like lubricate that process, because if our goal is, look, we're not worried about promotions now, we're worried about flow of information, flow of data, something I'm giving you something you need. Tom, you're a customer of mine, and and the person creating it is the other customer, right? So I've got this contract that I need to work together to meet, and I like it a lot. I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we'd really have tried to make it, just that simple.
Yeah, it's great. Excellent. Okay. Well, let's appreciate that. And I think I'd like to jump into some of our sort of classic, almost classic questions. Like data management's a science that you've been doing for a couple of years, right? Same here, just a few. How has your perspective changed over time? What are some of the notable, not necessarily trends, but what would you say, like when you started, from where you were a few years ago till now, the big differences?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that question. I thought about that one.
I did prompt you. I mean, in all
Yeah,
fairness, I did give you the answers to the questions to the test.
right. So, I, I, Tom, let me field test something on
Sure, please.
you, okay? And I'm going to start with the assertion that data is a second class citizen.
Okay.
Okay. Now you're shaking your head up and down a little bit.
So I'm gonna push on that slightly, but go ahead. Why don't you finish your thought, and I'm gonna gently nudge back.
Okay. Most people say, sometimes most people agree with it. Some say, no, it's a third class citizen.
Interesting.
But, but here's the rest of the argument. A
Okay.
generation ago, it wasn't on the radar screen.
100%.
We have gone from being not on the radar screen to a second class citizen, okay, in a generation,
Mm.
right? Now that you can buy it or not, but
No, I fully buy that. I fully buy that.
it is amazing.
Tom, I remember when we were building systems. This is a long time, mainframe systems, where end user computing, things designed we would give to user, was a copy of production. And it was only reason it was available to them is because they couldn't hurt anything that was live. But none of it was organized for human consumption. It was designed for systems, right? That's when Star Schema found its way. So I agree. I think my only pushback isn't that we're second. Would you? My contention is: do you still think we're second class, or in the age of data driven decision making and artificial intelligence in particular and training models, do you think we've moved from second class to first? Like, are we finally getting to sit at the front of the plane, or still not yet?
Yeah, we're in baggage, so uh,
Okay,
uh,
your assertion is we're still not a seat at the table.
so let me say this: I think that if AI is to succeed,
Mm-hmm.
data must get to the front of the data. I do not see how, with today's levels of quality and
Mm-hmm.
today's architectures, right? I do not see how AI goes well,
Mm-hmm.
um, right? And I don't know. I for about a year now, maybe more, large numbers of people have acknowledged that data is the primary inhibitor to AI,
Mm-hmm.
and but we've not yet crossed the going from sort of thinking it to doing the right things about
Mm-hmm.
it yet, right? And so in that respect, I don't think we're a first class citizen.
Okay.
Now, I can point to some organizations and say, like, right over here, it's a first class citizen,
Sure. Sure.
and
Sure.
over there, it's a first class citizen. But
Mm-hmm.
no, not generally, and certainly, even though there may be a point of light, not in any big corporation.
Okay. No, that's fair. I think yeah, I've seen, yeah, yeah. I guess, you know what? The more I'm thinking myself, the more I'm realizing, like, if you really value data as a first class citizen, you wouldn't have 11D6 copies of the same data in 12 different data stores or whatever. Like, I don't think 11D6 is a number, but you got my idea. I don't think we'd have all these copies of essentially what is junk all over the place, right? I can't tell you how many organizations I've been in as a consultant and as an employee where there were full projects scanning data stores to make sure we didn't have personally identifiable information in stores. So you know what, Tom, I'm gonna agree. We're in steerage. I'll go to steerage. I won't say baggage. We're at the bottom of the Titanic. We're on the third levels.
So look, I mean, but the full story is that's where we are, but we have an opportunity, right? So I did not ever think that data would become a first class citizen until there was a business imperative, right? And the business imperative could have been after the financial crisis, right? The bad data hammered banks in the financial crisis.
Yeah,
Everybody got
absolutely.
hammered, right? But they got bailed out, and
Mhm.
so the business motivation to really fix data, right, didn't remain. The
That's a
business
really
right,
go
the
ahead. Sorry.
business motivation now, uh, maybe AI will go away. I don't know, but
Hmm.
it is the thing that is in front of you and I right now.
That's a fascinating perspective because I think if I remember during the financial crisis, one of the hardest problems we were trying to solve is determining the credit worthiness, the real credit worthiness, and not of the parent entity, right? But all the subsidiaries, right? We had no idea because they owned, parent the multiple, sub entities that I'm actually trading with or I'm working with or whatnot. And like they seem stable, but like could all these other sister organizations or even the parent organization go south? And we had no way of knowing. It was a tremendous exercise into determining credit worthiness and their health and credit health essentially. Yeah,
So, and by
that's
the way, I
interesting.
mean, in the run up to that, mortgages were falsified, right?
Yeah,
And
right. All the
credit agencies
yeah.
couldn't rate things. The
That's fair.
problem you got to was, was kind of at the far end of it, right?
True.
When things are cascading and
It's true.
going bad quickly, right? I mean, that that was pretty darn scary. Um,
But your
and
thesis that was bailed out, like and prevented the banks from actually solving the problem. Like your this externality of influx of cash to save institutions prevented them from healing from that wound. That deeper wound was I wasn't treating. We didn't have good data organization. I think probably like you said, the smarter organizations woke up, but the analog. It's an interesting analog. I just occurred to me that around 9/11, when we'd had a number of clients that had, critical workstations under their desks in the World Trade Center, right? And we learned the hard way, in a terrible way, frankly, that you need to have data offsite and it's got to be redundant. That lesson was learned, right? Like protecting your assets against something catastrophic. But when it came down to the financial crisis, whatever, 6, 7 years later, 8 years later, it didn't. That the lesson of quality and really instituting, like, understanding the hierarchy of the relationship. I mean, the whole legal entity identifier came out of that, which is a good thing, the LEI and all that. But like, I don't know. That's interesting. Thank you, Tom. That was a really give me plenty to think about on that one. That's an interesting perspective. That externality.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
spin it over in your head. I mean, give me a call in a couple of weeks.
I
Let's
will. Yeah, it usually
yeah,
takes me that long.
right.
Yeah.
See, like, I mean, the point of that is okay. Well, I'm worried about data quality and AI, and well, why? Well, am I making this up out of thin air? And the answer is no, right? Like
Right.
the math to create those collateralized debt obligations and so forth. It was pretty darn clever, right? But the data that went into it, and so now here we have the math is
Yeah.
pretty darn clever, and data's going into it, and it gets hidden, and who knows,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, this is great. Thank you, Tom. What are some of the top problems your clients are facing today?
I work on two things. I work on data
Hmm.
quality issues, and I work on organizational issues,
Okay.
and a lot of times the two are coupled, right? So
Sure.
you know, a lot of time, one of the reasons data is a second class citizen is we're trying to bolt it on a structure that was designed for industrialization.
Sure.
Okay. And that's business of putting people in the middle and clear responsibilities and around data. I mean, that's a response to that, right?
Sure.
So I spend about, I don't know, maybe three-quarters of my time on quality issues
Mm.
and a quarter on, getting this org stuff right.
Getting stood up that way. And do you find common patterns in the data quality problems? Like, is it? Like I said, I go back to your initial comment about the creator and then the customer. Do you find common themes that people can sort of think about in terms of just general hygiene, or they've got to call Tom and have him come in and save the day?
Uh, yeah, I will call Tom, have
Call
him
Tom.
come
Tom Redman. Tom Redman.
in. But on the other hand, let's face it, this notion of a customer and a creator, it's just not that hard, right? You
Tom,
know,
don't diminish there's power in simplicity, right? I think
there,
that's
there is power in simplicity. But look, that has been the recurring theme.
mm,
Mostly, a lot of times I do hand consulting, right? And so what you're doing now is you're making errors here and
mm.
you're correcting them there, right?
Ah.
Okay. And I want you to see just how dumb that is, right? So rather than doing that, why don't you quit making them here,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
and so that is a recurring theme. Now the other thing
Mm,
is it is such an easy trap to fall into cleaning up stuff, right?
mm.
We have this, sort of, get it done mentality.
Sure.
Take ownership. Poor guy working on the loading dock. Oh, this needs to ship. I can't figure it out, right? Goes back and studies it, calls around, talks to his buddies, right? Oh, we've got somebody over there, right? I mean, we're very respectful of the
Mm.
work to fix it here, right?
Sure.
And today we're respectful. It
Sure.
got the order out. It solved the customer problem. And so, the pattern is somehow that exactly the wrong behavior gets rewarded,
Mm.
right? And I'm not saying, oh, don't ship the customer order. You've got to
No, no.
ship the customer order.
Of course.
But then
Of course.
tomorrow you got to say, how am I going to get in front of this?
Right, right,
Right.
right,
And
right.
and so that pattern of how easy it is to get sucked into this trap of what I need to do today, I see everywhere.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. And I think the if we fix it at the source, we all know that, right? But are we willing to do it? Are we willing to make the effort, right? Because it's costly and it's time consuming. And yeah,
Well, once you start doing it, it saves a lot of money. I mean,
sure.
the courageous part is making a measurement, and
Mm.
and you know, so I don't know. Like if I had a dime for every time somebody said, "Well, son, let me tell you, these data are as good as anywhere in the industry," right? People don't call me son as much as they used to, right?
It's a
And then
sad. I
okay,
know.
right? And then, well, let's go make a measurement. And so it comes out 63%, right? So 63%, that's the best you can do, kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
um, so so there's this appeal to plausible deniability, uh, right? Uh, and sometimes it takes people with a little bit of courage to get
Yeah.
over that.
Yeah. And I think if you until you actually do start the instrumentation, the measurement, it does raise uncomfortable questions about is this product area working on its thing? Is this team doing their thing correctly? Right. But like you said, that's the courage part. If you're willing to look yourself in the mirror and say, we're not at, we want to, our goal is 80% and we're at, our goal should be 100%, but we recognize it's not possible today. Do you get a lot of pushback, in terms of, like doing the instrumentation? Like you mentioned courage a few times. Like, do you have to find that person willing to sponsor it, take the chance, be the brave one?
Yes, the two requirements I find to work with me is somebody has to have a business problem and an open
Mm.
mind. Because if you're already perfect, you don't need me. And if you don't have a problem, I don't know why you're talking to me.
Yeah.
Tom, I want to make one other point. I mean,
Please, of course.
and so, like if you think about senior management's responsibility, they set the organization.
Hmm.
And these things that we've talked about happening, they're a direct result of the organizations that senior management has set up, right? They have set up silos. They've set metrics around performance
Sure.
within silos, right? This what people do and the way they think. I mean, it stems naturally from the organizations in which they find themselves, right? And ultimately, I mean, if you're going to do something across a company, right,
Mm.
senior management has to recognize that they at least they're complicit in allowing this to happen, and they're going to have to take steps that
Mm.
they're personally going to have to support to
Yeah.
make it different,
And ultimately be accountable to.
right?
In a lot of companies, in senior management's defense, not that I'm in senior management, but I do think some of the challenges stem from acquisition, right? Like a company A acquires company B. Yes, should we do the full on integration? Sure. But then you do that cost benefit calculation and then you figure out, well, it's going to take this much time. And then I think going back to your point about the data not being a first class citizen is if you valued the data that company B is, you're acquiring the acquiree, right? If you care about that data quality, then you do bring them onto your platform and you do make them part of the infrastructure, the systems, the content, such that it's not going through this gyration to make it fit into organization A. I don't know, any thoughts about that?
So look, I think that there's a million reasons things happen, and acquisition is certainly one of them. But
Sure.
just we decided to go into a new line, right? We got big enough and we had to split. We
Mm,
decided, we're not just going to work in, we started in California, now we're in Washington, and now we're in
mm,
US and everywhere. Look, successful companies are very dynamic,
sure.
and these things happen.
Mm,
A million things happen. And still, I don't want to let senior management off the hook.
mm.
Um, there's a famous quote by, I think the guy's name is Arthur Jones, and he says organizations are perfectly designed to achieve the results they achieve. Okay.
I
And
like that. I like that.
right, you think about it,
Oh yes, that goes
right?
in a lot of directions.
That goes in a lot of directions. And if data is to become a first class citizen, right?
Mm,
We became a second class citizen dealing with the current organization
yes,
and bolting on and forcing our way to the table and stuff like that.
sure.
We're not going to become a first class citizen unless there's some pretty profound organization changes. And by the way, I mean, this business of customers and creators, it is a profound organization change. It is a
Yes,
new role and responsible, a set of
yes,
rules and responsibilities at once obvious and at once transformative.
yes, 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 yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I keep it's continuing to roll around. Yeah, but I get the bravery part too, right? Willing to take the chance, willing to buck the system, willing to put the budget on the line because it comes down to budget. What do you think of the in the what do you think of the role of chief data officer? Right, because it's like it's not new, but it's I don't know 10, 15 years. I'm guessing I'd have to look that one up exactly, but do you see that as a compliance type role, as a sort of extension of governance or quality? Where do you see that, and how does that fit into this dynamic?
So it's a really good and it's an important question. And so like if something comes up and you want to sort of figure out how to deal with it organizationally, well, what do? You bolt it on, right?
Sure, just like
Well,
that acquisition. Right.
right? You bolt it on, and I don't know. Is that like I think a lot of DEI initiatives got
Okay.
bolted on, right?
Mm, mm,
Kind of thing. And in some respects, early on, you can kind of get it. It's like we don't know what's going on here. We know there's something important. Like let's put somebody in charge and let them struggle with it, kind of thing, right? and and so but by and large CDOs, I mean, there's just way too many styles. Some of them are there because we got to stay out of trouble with the regulator, right? Some of the first chief data officers in financial services were there to stay out of trouble with regulators, going forward. And then some of them were this whole culture thing, and
mm,
then some of them were about governance. And then the last
mm.
3 or 4 years, it's all been around AI kind of thing. And by and large, I think they've been set up to fail. They don't have enough resources. They don't have the remit. Many of them, and many of them feel they have to have like an early win, like in 3 months.
Quick
I,
wins and early wins. Yeah, yeah.
I I was working with one, and he's talking about early wins. So what do you mean by that? And I said, well, I don't know. I think I got to get something done in 100 days. And then we talked to their boss and said, well, an early win around here is 2 years, kind of thing. I mean, that really
Yeah, yeah.
changed the conception of of what we were going to do. And so
That's
I,
interesting.
I I don't think it's going well for most CDOs. There
Mm,
are, there's at least a handful where it is going well,
sure.
and right, and I think, I don't know, by and large, they've dealt with the organization stuff in one way or another.
Mm,
They've got the CEO saying the right things.
mm,
They've got enough people, right? every little project they want to do is not, not a chore. More and more people are getting involved. Um, so
So it's incrementally, we're making incremental progress. But I think what I've observed, and I think you're stating as well, is, if you think of their function as regulatory compliance governance, those are cost centers, right? That's overhead, and you're not going to get the budgets that you get for, the initiative to break into new market or build new product, right? That's again where you're coming. And I don't mean to diminish those roles in any way. Like that's just the reality is those investments are mandatory investments or they're necessary investments. They're not necessarily tied to how do we drive revenue, or how do we increase the top line.
right, nor are you going to go from we did a good job at regulatory reporting, so now get us into something more exciting.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not going to make that
That leap. Yeah.
Right.
That's
So by the way, I mean, some are called chief analytics officers or chief AI officers, and that represents
interesting.
a different
A
sort of
shift.
shift.
Excuse me.
Right. And one thing too, and I forgot to mention this earlier,
No, please.
but step one in organization is get data out of IT. Right. They are
What do you mean
just
by that?
well,
Like,
too many chief data officers report to the head of IT. All right.
oh, organizationally.
Yes.
I
Right.
see.
And data is a different kind of asset than
Mm,
technology. Right. And if you put it in IT, I tend to manage it so the IT will work, but not that you can turn the data loose. And
interesting.
and in quality, it's hard for an IT guy to get this notion of customers and creators and so forth. Right. So
Interesting.
it's kind of like sometimes I give the analogy, you do not argue that the head of HR ought to report to property management because people work in the buildings, right? The logic that the data ought to report to IT because it's in the technology just doesn't hold water.
Dust doesn't hold water. Yeah.
Right?
That's good. I like that analogy. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Who should they report to?
Well, I mean, look, I think there's a bunch of experiments going on.
Mm,
Um, I think that in a generation, right? In a generation, they will report to CEOs, uh, and the data will be on par with people,
mm,
with capital,
mm,
um, with operations, and it'll be sort of like recognized it as an asset, or make want to call it a pillar, or whatever it is, and in terms of leverage for the future of the organization, it belongs on that level. Um,
yeah.
and so we're a long way from there yet.
Mm, yeah, I agree. That's an interesting perspective. Years ago, my background's, as you know, it's been a mix of finance and data, and I keep having this on and off thought experiment that one of the things finance is extremely good at doing is valuing assets, right? You
Right.
can estimate future, present value, future value. There's all these mathematical models for the financial value of an asset. And if we make the assertion that data is an asset, which is a cliche, right? But I've often wondered, not if you've ever seen anybody do this, but I've often wondered, is there a way we could apply the similar financial evaluation, financial assessment, of assets like that we do on instruments, et cetera, like on securities or contracts or whatnot, on data? That's
So
even a
Tom,
feasible pursuit.
yeah, look, I mean, I think it's a really big idea. I mean, there's a great book by a guy named Doug Laney called Infonomics, in which he
Infonomics.
argues that we do just that, and he lays out, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen models for
Really?
how you may think about that. Now, I'll get the details wrong, but I think that there's like rules on why data can't appear on a balance sheet in the U.S.
Ah,
Okay,
okay.
but that doesn't mean, I mean, you started this conversation out with acquisitions, right? Certainly
Mm,
in every acquisition, you ought to be valuing the data. right? You ought to be valuing the intangibles. I mean, no, just the same way you're valuing their brand
Their
or
brand,
customer
right? I
loyalty,
mean,
right?
what's more intangible and valuable than a brand? I'm not diminishing it, right? But at the same time, what's more intangible than a brand?
It's a must
Interesting.
do. Okay.
Right.
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 And I think that, Doug is like us. I mean, he's really
Ugly.
pushing this agenda hard, and he's
I
created
like
some
it.
points of a light. And, and maybe it's another thing that, we're nowhere on we're first class citizens when.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. When we're valued as part of the acquisition or the
yeah, yeah, right.
organizational structure. Or interesting. Yeah, I need to look that up. No, thank you. In what was it again? Info. Oh, you have the book. Excellent. Infonomics, Douglas Leany. I think I remember him from 100 years ago.
Right. See,
That's fantastic. Yeah, I like that. I like the stickies. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So I have to go back in the vault, but I believe when I was at a company called Red Brick Systems, one of the first databases designed for data warehousing, turning data models into basically human consumable assets, if you would. I'm being loose with the term asset here, but basically implementation of Star Schema in a way that. Do you need to get some water? You
Let me take this lozenge and let's go about 15 more minutes.
sounds perfect. Yeah, I don't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, and recovery is important. Um, but I think we worked together or at least he was one of the folks that was reviewing our company back in the day when he was part of Gartner. So that's interesting. I don't know if he's still part of Gartner, but thank you for sharing that down. That's great. Um, let's see. So I know we probably just scratched the surface of the artificial intelligence side of our conversation. I'm fascinated by this chief analytics officer, this analytics, role within an organization that's not sort of the straight up governance or compliance or regulation side of the house. I mean, when you talk a little, I'm not familiar with that role, frankly, and I'd love to learn more about what they do and how they fit within the organization, who their customers are, and who they create data for, as well as consume for.
One of my first clients when I hung up my shingle was a guy by the name of Jeff McMillan, and Jeff for some time was the chief analytics officer at some part of Morgan Stanley. Maybe it was wealth management, and now he's the head of firm-wide AI. And so Jeff, several years ago, started out on a project called Next Best Action.
Okay.
And the idea was if you're a financial advisor, I don't know, you've got 200 or 300 clients, you got all this stuff going on in the world every day. How do you know what you should work on? How do you know what you should work on in any given day? And so
Huh.
this next best action project was aimed at doing this. It's an AI thing, and to dig into what it did. He reported to the head of wealth management when he
Okay.
did that work, and so they had to do a lot of work, right, to make a system that worked, that did so at scale. Obviously, I don't know, maybe let's say there's 50,000 financial advisors. Maybe there's more than that. Well, they didn't all buy in at once,
Yeah,
right?
that takes time. Rollout takes time.
Rollout, rollout takes time, and so that was a big project that they did, and then he became head of firm-wide AI, and this to me, by the way, gets back to the data quality thing, because several years ago he kind of recognized what's some stuff we have that's really our best stuff, our proprietary stuff, and it was
Sure.
research reports, right?
Mm.
And let's say they had on the order of 200,000 research reports, and he recognized that maybe 100,000 of them were current and valuable and stuff like that, and asked the question, well, how do I make it so that every one of our financial advisors has access to our best research on a subject? And that led to a project called the Advisors Assistant, and so like got started with those, and now I'm just really trying to help others all across the organization start their own projects.
Interesting.
And no, I mean, and I just want to call out a couple of things. It's first of all, he's reporting, right? When he was in one division, there's no layers, and the other thing is he started cleaning up those. He started cleaning up and labeling those research reports 5 or 6 years in advance of knowing what they were doing, knowing how they were going to use them. So quality was front and center in the way Jeff was thinking about this, right? So I mean that's my best example. I mean, by the way, I'm extremely proud of Jeff. We worked at early in his career. He really picked up this question of who's your customer and what problem you're trying to solve.
We're trying to solve. Yeah.
Anyway, so I think there is a lot in that. I also want to point out he didn't do anything generally first. He started out solving a specific problem.
And then it became more general over time, but still it's not a general service. It's a set of specialized analytic services, it sounds like, or an approach maybe.
Well, I think it's general in the sense that there's more than one thing, but each one of the things is specific.
It's tailored to a problem. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not current on this, but I know that they're doing something to try to so to be able to redo the code base. And one of the things Gen AI has been pretty good at is that. And so there's a big Morgan Stanley project to, don't hold me on this, but sort of like reverse engineer the code base.
Yeah, especially when you've got these legacy systems that have been around forever, and you want to basically migrate them. The mistake is trying to just lift and shift, right? It's you want to basically come into a situation where rewriting the code base is going to add so much more value. But it's that big investment that you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, I've never been a technologist, but I don't think anybody understands COBOL anymore.
I'm getting every day, Tom. I set a goal for myself when I was a very young man. I don't know if this might have started in college, but certainly shortly thereafter, I set a goal to live my entire life and die not knowing COBOL. So each day I get a little closer to my goal.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, as a technologist though, you mentioned something that's interesting though, that is a huge problem, given the volume of data that's increasing, right? Given the breadth and kind of data. Have you seen in your clients or have any thoughts about the automated labeling, and obviously labeling, adding metadata to data, right, is a helpful exercise in terms of classification and for finding it for different purposes, whether it's a research report, unstructured data, or whether it's structured data. Have you seen anyone do a good job of automated labeling or labeling of content outside of the human tagging? I mean, the image tagging is one thing, but I'm really talking more about the more broad data.
So not really. Okay, I mean, like good is a relative term.
Sure. Good enough.
It's a hard problem.
It is.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought you were going to ask me then, we've kind of in some ways hinted at, technical debt has gotten way out of control, right?
Yes.
And data debt has gotten way out of control. And it's just, kind of like we add things on and boy, that got harder and harder. And then the cloud came along. So it was still hard, but you could do it cheaply. And right. Yeah. And I think that, at some point organizations are going to sort of have to confront this. Oh, you said it this way. Why do we have 8011 copies of customer? Right. So kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe we need 11, but it's not 8011.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yes.
Right. And I think we are getting to the point where you can sort of do stuff within a silo with AI, but the bigger benefits are going to come when you cross silos.
Absolutely.
Right? it's no different than bigger benefits come when we coordinate work, right? And
Absolutely.
right, and people get together and they talk and they figure things out, and we're going to have to get that shared vocabulary
Mm,
such that computers can do that as well.
interesting.
And that is a big, nasty problem.
Yes.
I'm not recommending to any of my clients that they're ready to take it up yet.
Mm,
Okay. But, you know, in the next 4 or 5 years, I think some organizations are going to have to rethink that.
mm. Yeah, you kind of touched. You came right up to the edge without saying the word semantics, and I have a very strong affinity for structured language and getting our language, getting terms consistent. And you can't do what you describe. You can't have interoperability across systems without a common semantic layer. I don't care what you can have translation layers and the mappings and all that, but the reality is, to do it effectively, you really need that. And now we're talking about having quote unquote intelligent systems talk to each other. They need a common language, right? But
Right.
like you said, it's a hard problem. I mean, that's a really hard one, and it goes hand in glove, in my opinion, with the attribution, with the labeling side, and making sure people understand the content,
Yeah.
and the machines do too.
I just want to make one more comment about this, and
Please.
I'm really working hard on adopting the term shared vocabulary.
Mm.
Okay, as opposed to semantics,
Sem-
and the
mm.
reason I'm doing that is semantics sounds like it's a technical thing. Okay,
I think you're
but
right. It does. Makes us sound smarter, doesn't it, Tom? Though, when you say, ontology, taxonomy, semantics.
yeah, but here's the pushback: the way we work together,
Mm.
that's an organization problem. That's a
Tom.
senior management issue, right? And that we do not have shared vocabulary is again a consequence of the way we've chosen to organize. We thousands of organizations have failed to get all the technologists in the room and hammer out this semantics. It doesn't work, right?
No, you are confirming some of my many frustrations with trying to sell this as a project or to
Mhm.
explain it to an executive. Like, why do I need a semantic layer? But a shared vocabulary is very easy to understand. I like those words so much better, right?
Yeah,
Because it gives people more. It's again, it goes back to the hard problem of simplicity, right? It's you don't need to worry about an ontology or taxonomy. Are we describing the thing as the thing via a shared vocabulary? I like that.
people
My la-
ask me, they ask me about it and say, well, do I need a shared vocabulary? And the answer is most days probably not. But every time you're
mm,
trying to work together, you need it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Or
that's when you're doing really important stuff.
yeah, yeah. Within your sphere, you don't necessarily, but as soon as you want to cross that organizational or system or boundary of whatnot, yeah, you need to be able to communicate across.
That's right.
My last question, because I know
Yeah.
we're running up on the clock. I appreciate you so much for taking your time today. If you were to look back over your career, and if you were to be able to time travel and give yourself some advice as a young man, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Um, so let me say this: the signal event in my career
Mm,
uh, happened when I told you we'd done some work at Bell Labs. We're getting
mm-hmm.
traction. I decided to write a management paper, and I
Okay.
sent this paper off to Sloan Management Review. I was never in publish or perish, but I'd done this sort of usual amount. But I sent it off to Sloan Management Review, and a couple weeks later, I got a call back from a nice woman, and her name's Sarah Cliff, and she said, "Tom, there's some really interesting ideas in this paper. It's a damn shame you can't write." Okay, and uh, and
I'm sorry for laughing, but like that's the frankness and hilarity is it was irresistible. So
yeah,
sorry.
I've learned to tell the story so people laugh, right?
I appreciate that.
But then I'm pretty sure I went home and cried,
Of
right?
course, that's crushing.
Right. But a couple of days later, what I recognized was stuff I wanted to achieve in my career depended on me being a better communicator.
There you go.
Okay. And
There you
not
go.
just writing stuff, saying stuff,
Mm-hmm.
listening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I and I put a real premium on that.
Mm.
You talked about saying things in simple ways. Sarah Cliff started me on that path,
Interesting.
right? Sarah Cliff, and she started with some basic stuff like don't use passive voice verbs, and
Sure.
and things like that. But I really appreciate you calling it out. That was not a skill I was born with. I had to
Mm.
learn it, and I've had to relearn it and learn it and work on it every day. And so, going back, I mean, I'm glad I learned it in a painful way, right?
Sure.
But if I could have learned that earlier, it would have
Mm.
been helpful.
Was there any particular author, book, or books that you would say this helped me become a better writer, or improve my craft, or was it just a series of progressions over the years?
I don't know the answer to that, Tom. I mean,
Okay.
I read everything. Um,
Okay. So voracious. So the answer is read, and
yeah,
keep reading. That's great. Yeah. No, I appreciate
there's
that.
people I like their style. I mean, I'm a big
Mm.
fan of Peter Drucker.
Mm.
Um, I'm a big fan. I do a lot of work now with Tom Davenport, right? I like
Nice.
the way he simplifies things. Infonomics, I mean, that's pretty well
Yeah.
written,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
right? So,
Excellent.
uh,
No, that's great. I appreciate
yeah.
that, Tom. Thank you. And
Okay.
thank you for your time today. This is a fantastic conversation. I have about 100 more questions, but we'll have to do that in the future.
Thank you for reaching out, Tom. I'm really glad we did this.
Yes, I appreciate you.